All right, let's dive into one of history's most fascinating puzzles, the Assyrian Empire. Now, these guys were an absolute powerhouse in the ancient world. But here's the thing that makes them so interesting. They have this dual identity. How could one of history's most feared warrior cultures also be its greatest librarians?
I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. It's a wild contradiction, right? On one hand, you've got this reputation for being totally ruthless conquerors. But on the other, you have this incredible legacy of preserving human knowledge. So today, we're going to unravel how both of those things can be true for the very same people. So, first things first, let's get our bearings. Who were the Assyrians? Well, they were a major civilization in ancient Mesopotamia, the area often called the cradle of civilization. They held down the northern part of that region, right along the super important Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
Now, the Assyrians weren't some flash in the pan. Their history is this incredible cycle of rising to immense power, completely collapsing, and then fighting their way right back to the top. And they didn't just do it once, but multiple times. They were, without a doubt, the ultimate comeback kings of the ancient world.
Okay, so check out this roller coaster of a history. Their first big moment in the sun was under a guy named King Shamshi-Adad. The empire got huge, they got rich, but after he died, poof, it all weakened and fell to their rivals, the Babylonians. You'd think that's game over, right? Nope, not even close. Centuries later, by 1360 BC, they came roaring back and conquered Mesopotamia all over again. And all of this just sets the stage for their final and most powerful form, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, kicking off in 744 BC.
And this is the period that really cemented their fearsome reputation. The Neo-Assyrian Empire was built on one thing above all else, just absolute, overwhelming military might. They became one of the most dominant empires the world had ever seen up to that point.
You see, for the Neo-Assyrians, fighting wasn't just a job for soldiers. It was a core part of their culture. It was their entire way of life. This was a true warrior society. And they weren't just fighting to defend their borders. War was how they expanded, how they controlled a massive, often rebellious empire. In fact, their very reputation for being cruel was a weapon all on its own.
They were also brilliant and, frankly, brutal military innovators. When it came to taking down a fortified city, these guys literally wrote the playbook. We're talking massive battering rams, mobile siege towers that could roll right up to the walls, and superior iron weapons while many of their enemies were still using bronze. They even used clever, ruthless tactics like diverting a city's entire water supply to starve them into surrender. Just terrifyingly effective.
So it's really easy to just focus on what they destroyed, right? I mean, they were conquerors. But that brings up a really important question. What did they actually do with all that power? What did they build?
Well, it turns out, they built a superpower in every sense of the word. The very same organization and discipline that made them such incredible warriors also made them master engineers and builders. They didn't just conquer, they created.
And the scale of their projects was just immense. They built these magnificent capital cities. You might have heard of them: Ashur, Nimrud, and the legendary Nineveh. These were basically ancient megacities with massive walls, incredibly extravagant palaces, and even advanced canals and aqueducts to bring water. Under rulers like Tiglath-Pileser III, they even built a whole system of roads across the empire, which let their armies and messengers move at speeds nobody had ever seen before.
Okay, but all of this, the military genius, the incredible engineering, it all leads us to the great twist in the Assyrian story. And it's a twist that is perfectly embodied by their last great king, a man who was the living, breathing version of this empire's shocking contradiction.
Meet King Ashurbanipal. On one hand, he was every bit the Assyrian warrior king we've been talking about. Powerful, dominant, and leader of an army that struck fear into everyone. But, and this is a huge but, he was also a dedicated scholar, a total intellectual who had a deep passion for preserving knowledge.
Just how dedicated was he? In his capital city of Nineveh, Ashurbanipal built a massive library. And from the ruins of that single library, archaeologists have found over 30,000 clay tablets. 30,000! That is an absolutely staggering amount of information from the ancient world.
His mission, and it was an ambitious one, was to create a collection of basically all knowledge. He sent his scribes all over Mesopotamia to gather and copy every important text they could find, on every subject you can imagine. And it's because of his library that we still have some of the most priceless works of ancient literature today, like the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Code of Hammurabi. A warrior king saved them for all of us.
So after centuries of this incredible dominance, of rising, falling, and just refusing to stay down, it's hard to imagine the Assyrian Empire ever really ending, right? But, as we know, all great empires eventually have their time run out.
And when their end came, it was shockingly fast and totally complete. In this dramatic reversal of fortune, a whole coalition of enemies, led by the very people they'd conquered centuries before, the Babylonians, rose up against them. In 612 BC, they brought the mighty Assyrian Empire crashing down, for good this time. The great cities were destroyed, and their power was just broken.
Which leaves us with this final big question. Who were they really? Were they ruthless destroyers who built an empire on terror? Or were they dedicated preservers who, thanks to one king's incredible vision, saved ancient knowledge from being lost forever? The truth, of course, is that they were both. And it's that contradiction, that complexity, that makes the Assyrians one of the most compelling and unforgettable stories in all of history.